Hey everyone! It's been a heck of a month for us, but I hope you've all managed to stay healthy and safe out there. So, funny story, the entire reason I decided to go with Doom 64 for my next video is the fact that I have not received my copy of Doom Eternal just yet. Yes, having ordered the game from Amazon, I am still, at the time of this video's recording, waiting for it to arrive. But Amazon was at least kind enough to provide me with the digital code for Doom 64 in the meantime, a title I was very much looking forward to replaying. Out of all the various Doom games and sequels, I confess that this was one of the titles I had played the least, mostly due to having other interests on the N64 itself, and never taking the time to really sit down and get acquainted with it. With all of that info in mind, and with this new re-release of the game, including a new level made specifically to tie the series in with Doom Eternal, I just knew that the time was right. So, without further ado, let's see just how well Doom 64 holds up today. Doom 64. What an unfortunate life you've lived up to this point. For years, gamers skipped past you in the stores, thinking you were simply another re-release of the original Doom games, just made to look prettier on the N64. But oh, how wrong they were! Doom 64 was not a re-release of any kind. In fact, it's a full-fledged sequel to Doom 2. Yes, as far as I'm concerned, this is the real Doom 3, and you will never change my mind about that. So what exactly happened in 1997 that caused this one to become lost in time until just recently? Let's take it from the top. The game had been in development by Midway Games since 1994, originally planned to be a new game called The Absolution. Under the supervision of id Software, developers of the original Doom games themselves, Doom 64 would come to be. As mentioned before, many people saw the title Doom 64 and simply assumed that this was yet another port of the original Doom games, maybe with a slight coat of paint or a few new levels. And it's not hard to see why, as even the back of the original box keeps referring to this game as the quote-unquote newest version. To confuse people even further, we'd later see other games under id Software like Hexen and Quake 64 come out, all being direct ports of their PC counterparts. After all of that, can you really blame people for not knowing? Another thing to remember is the time frame. After Mario 64, many gamers, myself included, all wanted to see the next big 3D hit, and weren't quite as focused on seeing sprites like the ones in Doom once again. It also didn't help that shooter fans had already moved on to titles like Quake and GoldenEye would be releasing about 4 months later. The story of the game is simple enough. The UAC learns that despite the past victories of the Doom Marine, one demon entity managed to escape their satellite detection and has the ability to bring demons back from the dead. Naturally, the Doom Marine goes back in alone to handle the onslaught. At first glance, it may look like this is just another set of levels running in the same Doom engine we've seen 1,000 times over, but rest assured there are all kinds of key differences that make it feel like its own separate beast. For one thing, bigger weapons like the double-barrel shotgun and rocket launcher now have a recoil, which can knock you back a little bit with each shot you fire. That may not seem like a large difference at first, but try strafing and using it on a narrow walkway and see just how well that goes. The chainsaw also has 2 blades now. 2! The enemy sprites were all complete redesigns, with far more detail than what we saw in any of the previous entries. While this didn't seem quite as impressive at the time due to people wanting to see more full 3D models, it's held up surprisingly well, and looks smoother than ever here. The game also features a new enemy type called the Nightmare Imp. It was originally set to debut in the PlayStation 1 version of Doom, but that never happened. Although other demons and levels had to be excluded due to hardware constraints, it was nice to finally see a new one pop up at the same time. The game's final boss fight, known as the Mother of All Demons, or Mother Demon, is also brand new to this entry and looks appropriately terrifying. The next difference comes far later in the game, with a special weapon called the Unmaker. This overpowered laser weapon was originally meant to be used in the first Doom, but never made an appearance until this one. The weapon can also be powered up by unlocking 3 different runes, all adding to the weapon's speed, range of enemies to shoot, and number of lasers firing all at once. It is the only weapon considered to be stronger than the iconic BFG 9000, and an absolute beast to use. Cyber demons, feel thy wrath! And the biggest difference of all is how visually dark the game is. I saw a number of recent reviews actually complain about this due to some environments being difficult to see in. The point that I believe those reviewers may be missing is that this darkness was intentional. When dropping into dark rooms like this one here, you're supposed to barely be able to see what's going on, as it adds to the tension while you try and fumble your way out. Both visually and sound-wise, this Doom had a much gloomier atmosphere than its predecessors. I'm not sure if it directly inspired the way Doom 3 would later turn out, but it honestly wouldn't surprise me, as this was the first game in the series to attempt a more horror-themed style. Speaking of the sound, you may have noticed that the effects are lifted straight out of the PS1 port of the original Doom games. These sounds were all created by Aubrey Hodges, who also composed the game's music. Whether you liked or disliked the changes that these sounds and music brought to the series, Hodges is the man to thank for it. While I always had more fun with the heavy metal style we'd hear in the original Doom games, I couldn't help but have a soft spot for this setup too. After seeing countless re-releases of the same old thing, it was honestly refreshing to get something different out of the experience for once. Everything else about the game's structure is mostly the same. You fight your way through 32 levels of enemy hordes, find color-coded keys to open locked doors, get to the occasional secret rooms, and find the exit. Thankfully, the level design manages to keep things from getting stale at any point. While I wouldn't put it above the quality of, say, Doom 2, as that will always be my personal favorite, this game still managed to add some nice touches that separated it from the pack. For one thing, entering each room can leave you with a state of dread, not just because of the lighting, as mentioned previously, but the fact that it's not uncommon to be knocked down or zapped into a room unexpectedly, and to be surrounded by hordes of enemies with only seconds to react. Between this and the eerie sounds and effects, it put the Doom franchise into more of a horror direction than ever before, and actually managed to pull it off quite well in my opinion. While I won't go as far as to say that this entry broke a lot of new ground, it was still one of the first to try something a little different with the formula, and I think this did more to help it than hurt it. The design is not always perfect, though. There are multiple puzzles in the game that force you to hit a switch, and then run to whatever door or secret passage would open up before closing once again. While this isn't a major issue with the newest re-release, it is a pain to get through using an N64 controller. Keep in mind there was no auto run at the time, and the best way to get through this hurdle was to basically remap your entire controller setup in order to find one more compatible with running. Some of the secrets of this game can also be straight up unreasonable without some kind of guide handy. For example, I can't imagine many people figuring out how to get the third artifact in this sequence without some kind of help to tell them where to stand, aim, and shoot all at once. But still, it was hard not to be thoroughly entertained throughout. I found the stage No Escape to be particularly hectic and fun, and defeating the mother of all demons was immensely satisfying. The fact that the final level was called The Absolution after the game's original proposed title was also a nice little nod. The ending for this game, without a lot of us realizing it, also likely set the stage for Doom 2016, as it points out that the Marine chose to stay in Hell in order to ensure that the demons would never escape again. You still want more? Well, the 2020 re-release has you covered. After beating the campaign, or beating the super secret level Hectic, you'll be able to access 6 new stages never before released. This includes the last stage, Final Judgment, which serves as an official bridge gap between the classic Doom titles and Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal. While the information provided in the stage is interesting in its own right, and is sure to get a lot of people talking considering the things I already know about Doom Eternal's plot, but I couldn't help but notice this level felt more like a disappointing reskin of the No Escape stage I mentioned earlier, only not nearly as challenging or well designed. Still, more Doom is never a bad thing to me, so I was happy to gobble it all up. Honestly, I came out of this experience pretty shocked. While its sprite-based graphics may have taken away people's interest in the game at the time, it may have ironically helped it stand the test of time even more due to its recognizable, if it ain't broke, don't fix it look and feel. To put it simply, I think many of us were wrong about this game, and unnecessarily cruel to it. But we've now been given a second chance, and this title went from being a maybe for me, all the way to a must-play without question. My only regret is never having given it the time it deserved back in the day. It's honestly remarkable. Not only does this game hold up particularly well, especially with this new re-release, but it may even be one of the most underrated titles in the franchise's history. It's a shame that most of us were simply unaware of what we were getting at the time, but the developers at Midway can at least take solace in the fact that we know now, and we are eternally grateful to them for helping the series reach some new ground, and help bring the franchise into the excellent place that we now see it today. And that's going to do it for this video. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all again very soon.